The console lights flickered again, low voltage pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Outside the viewport, the Havron belt stretched endless and cold, rocks spinning through black space like ancient bones. Jocks leaned over the cracked panel, sweat beating at his brow despite the chill. The FTL coil was dead, charred from a surge he couldn't explain, and the emergency systems were hanging on by threads. Life support 37 hours, navigation offline. Comes barely whispering through static. His ship, the starboard edge, was now a coffin drifting in silence. Come on, he muttered, fingers trembling as he rerouted power to the emergency beacon. He slammed the broadcast switch. "This is Pilot Jocks Orn of the starboard edge," he said, voice low and urgent. "I've suffered a core failure in Sector 73 Havron. FTL coil is down. Requesting emergency docking. Anyone, respond." He let go of the button, listening. Nothing but the hum of emptiness. Then, after what felt like a full rotation of a dying moon, a click. A voice, mechanical and garbled. "Docking approved. Zyrath 9, Orbital Ring Bravo 7, Zyrath 9. Jocks frowned. The name stirred something uncomfortable. It wasn't on any star maps he trusted. It was one of those places mentioned in passing, the kind of system you only heard about when someone needed to disappear. But he didn't have a choice. With a broken ship and no other signals in range, it was either Zyrath 9 or death. The starboard edge limped toward the ring, main thrusters sputtering, hull plating groaning from stress fractures. Docking clamps latched with a painful grind, shaking the ship as if the station itself resented the intrusion. Jocks grabbed his jacket, sealed the hatch behind him, and stepped into the airlock. The hiss of recycled air greeted him like a cough. The docking bay was dim and rusted. Overhead lights flickered, casting jagged shadows over the walls. Half-disassembled cargo loaders sat abandoned, covered in dust and corrosion. The smell of burned metal, hydraulic fluid, and something decaying hung in the air. A few figures moved in the distance, none of them looking up. Workers, exiles, people with faces like stone. He approached a half-bent terminal near the loading crates, trying to find a map or maintenance request log. A thick-set man nearby, his jumpsuit stained with oil, glanced at Jocks and grunted. "You're not from around here, just passing through. I need a mechanic." The man's lips curled in something like a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Plenty of tinkerers, none worth your time. Unless you're desperate." Jocks hesitated. "I am." The man's expression darkened. He leaned in, voice a gravel whisper. "There's one. She works in the back hangars, fixes things fast." "Too fast? But people don't talk to her. Why not?" The worker looked away, scanning the shadows like something might be listening. "She ain't like us. 4 eyes, skin like wet stone. They say she ain't even got a heart. Came in with one of the old drifter crews. Never left. Don't talk to the one with 4 eyes, pilot. She fixes ships, but there's something wrong." With her, Jock said nothing. He just looked down the corridor toward the dark, humming heart of Zyrath 9. The corridor stretched ahead like a throat, dimly lit and pulsing with an old heartbeat, ventilation fans grinding and air recycling in labored huffs. Jocks walked slowly, boots thudding on metal flooring pitted with rust and oil stains. The deeper he moved into the docking ring, the fewer people he saw. Behind him, the muffled noises of repair crews and muttered trades faded into silence. Ahead, only the hum of dying machinery remained. He passed a flickering panel with a sign half burned away. The word maintenance was barely readable under layers of grime. The air grew colder, heavier. The walls sweated with condensation, and the lights above flickered like they were trying to warn him. At the far end, one of the side hangars yawned open like a wound. Inside, half a dozen ships sat in various stages of decay, some stripped bare, others clearly abandoned mid-repair. Cables dangled like vines, sparks crackled from open conduits. And in the middle of it all, crouched under a floating cargo lifter, was her dot. She was motionless at first, only the rapid motion of her long fingers betraying her focus. Blue-gray skin glistened under the work lights, crisscrossed by faint glowing lines that pulsed like water ripples. Her head was hairless, shaped like a teardrop, elegant but unnatural. And then there were the eyes, 4 of them. 2 large, dark, and unreadable, and 2 smaller ones glowing a soft violet embedded lower on her face. She wore no visible armor, no rank insignia, just a faded flight suit that had been repaired dozens of times. Her presence didn't screen danger, it whispered it, like a still current below broken ice. Jax stepped closer, cautious. "You're the mechanic?" She didn't look up. "I am. My ship's fried. I need help. Describe the issue." "Full? Coil blown. Nav systems glitching. Can't stabilize thrust vector. I barely made it here." She slid out from beneath the lifter like a shadow stretching in the light. Up close, she was taller than he expected, slender, not fragile, and entirely silent except for the click of her tools and the whisper of her breath. "I will inspect it," she said. Her voice was soft, even, but completely detached. Not cold, just filtered, like someone had trained her to remove anything emotional. "I'm Jax," he offered, unsure why. She didn't respond, just slung a metal tool case over her shoulder and gestured for him to lead. They walked in silence. Jax tried not to look, but it was impossible not to. The way she moved, quick, efficient, with a precision that was almost unnatural. Every step served a purpose. On board the starboard edge, she didn't waste a second. The moment she stepped through the hatch, her eyes darted over every surface, reading damage before he could explain it. She knelt beside the nav panel, removed a cover without asking, and inserted a sleek diagnostic wand. "Your stabilizer circuits are misaligned. Pulse inversion is backfeeding into your AI relay." Jax blinked. "How did you figure that out so fast?" "I listened to the hum." She wasn't boasting. She wasn't proud. It was just data to her. "Can you fix it?" "Yes." No elaboration. No small talk. Just a quiet rhythm of hands and logic. Jax stepped back and watched her work. Tools floated from the case to her fingers like trained birds. Wire strands were split and rewoven. Code lines flashed on screens faster than he could read. She rerouted the stabilizers, recalibrated the auxiliary thrusters, and balanced the vector array all in under an hour. When she finished, she stepped away. "It will fly now." Jax stared. "You fixed that faster than any Federation tech I've ever hired." She didn't respond. Her lower eyes blinked once. "That was incredible," he said. "You're amazing." That's when it happened. For the first time, she looked directly at him. All 4 eyes focused. No blink. No expression. Just stillness. Then she turned and walked away without a word, disappearing into the metal corridors. Like a wraith, he stood there, blinking, wondering if he'd said something wrong. But the next day, something pulled him back. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe something deeper. When he stepped into the side hangar again, she was there, alone, calibrating a laser saw. "Sira," he said softly. He didn't even realize he remembered her name from a maintenance tag on her case. "I just wanted to say thank you. You really saved me." She didn't look at him, but her hands stopped moving, just for a second. Then slowly she turned. Her voice was quiet, but not passive. "Why do you keep doing that?" "Doing what?" "Saying things like that." "As if I did something of value." Jax frowned. "Because you did." She looked away, and her lower eyes blinked twice. She muttered, more to herself than to him, "I don't understand humans." Jocks exhaled. "Honestly, neither do most humans." For the first time, she gave a small sound. Not laughter, not quite, but something like a breath of acknowledgement. And then she said something strange. "Your navigation system lacks optimal tracking. I will improve it." And without asking, she picked up her case and walked past him, heading for his ship again. Jax followed, not entirely sure what had just happened. But deep down, something told him this wasn't just about fixing a ship anymore. The hum of the ship had changed. Jax noticed it the moment they stepped inside the starboard edge. It wasn't louder, just sharper, cleaner. It sounded alive. Systems he hadn't touched in months now pulsed with renewed energy. Diagnostic panels no longer blinked red with errors. Even the internal lights seemed to glow with steadier resolve. He glanced at Sira, who was already halfway down the corridor with her metal case in hand. "You've been here before," he said quietly. "I have," she replied without turning. She moved like she belonged, fluid, confident, unafraid of touching what others feared to tamper with: the AI core, the shield harmonics, the auxiliary brain that stored subroutines even. Jocks didn't fully understand. Sira treated them like pieces of a wounded creature. No hesitation, just purpose. She stopped beside the nav console. Long fingers tapped across the interface. "You've never optimized this," she said. "You're bleeding thrust during rotation." Jax frowned. "How do you know that?" "Your trajectory data leaves a smear signature. Humans ignore it. I do not." It wasn't a boast. She didn't care if he understood. But Jocks did understand one thing. This woman, alien, quiet, unreadable, was seeing things he couldn't. He leaned against the panel. "You always this helpful to strangers?" She paused. "No." He watched her closely. "So why me?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her case, pulled out a custom lens modulator, and slipped it into the nav interface. The screen stuttered, then cleared like it had just taken its first full breath in years. Maps came alive. Stellar drift aligned. Jock stared, stunned. "You just doubled the efficiency." "Yes, you could run your own station with skills like this." "I do not want a station." "What do you want?" She hesitated. He saw it, just for a moment, the stillness in her hands, the pause in her breath. Her eyes blinked, both sets, and her voice dropped to something quieter than before. To be left alone, to work, to not be looked at like a defect. Her words hung heavy in the cabin. Jax didn't respond right away. He walked to the galley, poured 2 cups of instant stimulant, and handed one to her. She stared at it, confused. "It's not poison," he said with a crooked smile. She didn't smile back. She accepted it, turned it in her hands like it was made of glass, and sipped. Her eyes widened slightly. "It is bitter. Yeah. It helps you stay awake. I do not sleep often." "Same." He sat across from her. Silence settled in like dust. Finally, he asked, "What happened to you?" She stared at the cup. "I was created to fix what others could not. My people, they valued function, not feeling." "What happened when you showed feeling?" "I was discarded." Jax blinked. "You were exiled?" "I was defective." She said flatly, "My eyes were considered too sensitive. I observed too much, felt too much. They said it made me unstable." His voice was soft now. "You're not unstable." She looked at him, truly looked. 4 eyes, layers of expression behind each one. "Then why does everyone act like I'm dangerous?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he stood and moved to the wall where a small framed photo of his old crew still hung. He tapped the glass. "They said the same about me. Said I was too slow, too emotional. Didn't follow enough orders. She looked at the photo. What happened to them? Jox's jaw tightened. I buried them on Arvin 4 during the Delta breach. Sira said nothing, just stared at the frame. You're still kind. I'm still broken. Maybe, she whispered, but broken things understand each other. And for the first time, he saw something flicker across her face, not just reflection, but emotion. Not fear, not logic. Something like recognition. They worked late into the night, recalibrating shield harmonics, rewriting old Federation code into something leaner, smarter. Sira barely spoke unless explaining a process, but she stayed. Jox cooked something simple, protein and grain blend, and handed it to her. Without ceremony. She stared at the plate again. You made this? I did. For both of us, she said, fork in hand. Tasted it, her eyes closed. Her shoulders lowered a fraction. This is the first time. First time? Someone cooked for me, willingly. Jox sat down across from her. Then let it be the first of many. They sat there, two strangers in orbit above a forgotten world, eating in silence, but it was no longer empty, and just before sleep claimed him later that night, Jox glanced at the nav screen glowing with perfection and thought, maybe the hum of this ship was never broken. Maybe it was just waiting for the right hands to heal it. The following days passed like soft echoes in a hollow chamber, quiet, steady, and slowly building into something neither of them could name. Jox awoke each cycle to the rhythmic murmur of systems being recalibrated, adjusted, sometimes completely reimagined. And always Sira was there before him. She never knocked, never announced her arrival. She simply appeared. Sometimes in the engine room, sometimes at the AI core, once even in his sleeping quarters, adjusting the cabin's climate regulator by a half degree. She said nothing. Didn't even acknowledge him as he blinked into waking. Just completed. The task then vanished down the corridor again like a breath being exhaled. J. wasn't sure if she was helping, monitoring, or nesting. But what unsettled him most was how natural it had started to feel. One evening, he returned to the Starburn Edge after trading parts in the lower bazaar, only to find the interior changed. The furniture had been rearranged. The small utility table now aligned perfectly with the edge of the cabin window. Loose tools had been gathered into uniform rows by size. His old jacket, slung over the arm of a chair for weeks, was folded neatly and laid across the backrest. He walked slowly through the space, staring at each careful placement. Nothing was stolen, nothing damaged, just organized. Touched. In the cockpit, Sira stood silently, staring through the viewport at the dark curve of Zyrath 9. Her back was straight, hands folded behind her. Her head tilted slightly toward the Chiwundi. Stars. Jax cleared his throat softly. She didn't flinch. Your living space was inefficient. I corrected it. He stepped forward. You reorganized my ship? I optimized it. The chaos was unnecessary. He looked at her, not the back of her head now, but her reflection in the window. 4 glowing eyes catching starlight like distant moons. You okay? She hesitated. I like this ship. Why? It is quieter than the colony. More orderly, more breathable. He nodded slowly. People still treat you badly down there? Yes, even after everything you fix? Especially after. He walked closer, leaning against the panel beside her. That doesn't make sense. To them, she said softly, I am not someone. I am something. Jox's chest tightened. He wanted to say something clever, something comforting, but words felt like dust in his mouth. Instead, he reached behind the console and pulled out a small speaker module. He tapped the screen and music filled the room, soft, slow, instrumental. An old Earth song from a forgotten age. Sira turned slightly. What is that? Music. What is its function? It doesn't have one, he said. It's not logical. It just makes people feel things. She stood still for a long moment, listening. Then, slowly, she lowered herself to the Jimba co-pilot chair. Her fingers hovered over the seat as if unsure if she were allowed to sit. Jax gave her a nod. She sat, not stiffly, but with caution, like the chair might vanish beneath her. The music played on. Something delicate, something aching. After several minutes, she whispered, "What does this one make you feel?" "Hope," he said. "I do not understand it, but I want to." He turned toward her. "You will. It just takes time." She looked down. Her lower eyes blinked slowly. "Most have never given me time. Only orders." That night, Jax cooked again. Nothing special, just protein paste with ground spice and rehydrated greens. But Sira stared at the plate like it was art. She ate slowly, thoughtfully. "You could have sold these repairs," she said between bites. "You could have traded them for credit for upgrades." Jock shrugged. "Didn't want to." "Why not?" He leaned back. "Because sometimes helping someone without wanting anything back is the point." Her expression shifted, and he saw it for the first time. Conflict. "A storm just under the surface. What are you thinking?" he asked. She placed her fork down. "I do not know how to process kindness without suspicion." "Then let this be your first lesson," he said softly. "It's not a trick. I see what you are, and I think you're brilliant." Her head tilted slightly. He saw it again, barely perceptible, the corners of her mouth rising, not a full smile. Not yet, but something close. Later, long after she'd returned to her quarters on the lower level, Jock sat alone in the cockpit, watching the stars. The music still played softly, looping a single track. He closed his eyes and remembered her voice, fragile and robotic, asking, "What is hope?" He didn't know how to explain it yet, but something told him soon he wouldn't have to, because maybe hope wasn't a thing you defined. Maybe it was a person who stayed. The storm came without warning. An hour before it hit, the orbital scanners picked up a gravity spike along the edge of the Havron belt. Jock sat in the cockpit, frowning at the strange pattern like a shadow rippling beneath the surface of space. The meteor field was shifting in ways it shouldn't. Meteors didn't change direction. Not like this. But these were. He leaned forward, pulled up deep space telemetry, and swore under his breath. "That's a gravitational chain reaction." From behind him, a voice echoed calmly. "Impact window is less than 40 minutes. He turned. Sira stood by the systems core, her eyes glowing brighter than usual. She'd been quiet all day, absorbed in rewiring the shield array. Her expression hadn't changed, but something in her voice did. "How bad?" "Severe," she replied. "Velocity. Ranges exceed structural tolerance of most surface-level colonies. If they strike, the ring will collapse. What about us? If we stay here, we'll be shredded." Jock slammed the comm panel, tried to contact the dock supervisor. No response. Static. All around the station, emergency klaxons began to wail slow, uncertain, like they weren't sure they had anyone left to warn. He ran toward the systems core. "Can we jump?" "No," Sira said, without looking up. "Your FTL coil still requires 3 more hours of stabilization. It will tear us apart." "Then what do we do?" She paused. Then looked at him, truly looked. "We hold." Jock stared. "You mean stay in the blast zone?" "Not exactly." She turned to the console and began typing faster than he could follow. Lines of code spilled across the display. "We will reroute power through the auxiliary capacitor banks. Overload the outer shield ring. Redirect the current into the reinforcement nodes." Jox blinked. "Sira, no one's ever used the auxiliary cores for a full shield pulse. They're backup systems. Then we will make them more. The plan was insane. If it failed, the energy feedback could fry their guidance system and cook the main deck. But as he watched her work hands flying, mind already 10 steps ahead, he realized something terrifying and beautiful. She wasn't guessing. She knew. 20 minutes later, the ship vibrated like it was being held in a giant's grip. Meteors began to strike the outer edge of the ring, massive hunks of rock slamming into old metal like war drums. The lights on the starboard edge flickered. Systems surged. Now, Sira said, pulling a final lever. A deep, rumbling thud echoed through the ship as the shields flared. They turned gold, not standard blue, not Federation white, gold. Plasma arcs danced across the hull, forming an envelope of pure heat. The meteor storm screamed around them. Chunks slammed against the shield, disintegrating in bursts of light. JX gripped the rail, watching as the reading stabilized. Then, slowly, impossibly, fell. When the last rock burned away, he exhaled. You did it. Sira stood completely still. Sira? He stepped closer. Are you okay? She didn't respond. He moved in front of her and saw her hands trembling. Hey, he said softly. Talk to me. She blinked, slowly, all four, eyes shimmering faintly. That wasn't just logical, he said. That was brilliance. Her voice cracked. He reached forward gently, took her hand, cold and rigid. That was the most impressive thing I've ever seen on this ship, he whispered. You didn't just save me. You saved the whole ring. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Her head turned slightly. You mean that? I wouldn't be alive if I didn't. And then, for the first time since he'd met her, Sira broke. Tears welled in the corners of her 4 eyes, slow and silver, tracing lines down her smooth, blue-gray skin like melted starlight. She turned away, ashamed, pressing a hand to her face. I apologize, she whispered. I don't understand this. I was never praised. Not by my own kind. Not by yours. Jock stepped behind her, rested a hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch. You deserve every word, he said. You're not a tool. You're not a defect. You're extraordinary, and I see you. She turned slowly, not with logic or control, but with something closer to hope. Her gaze locked on his. Not analyzing, not calculating. Just being, I think, she whispered, that I have waited my whole life to hear those words. For a long time, they stood in silence, the golden light of the still glowing shields painting the room in warmth. Then she smiled. Not a simulation. Not a reflex. A real, fragile, glowing smile. Thank you, she said. JX, single quotes, S voice caught in his throat. Anytime. And in that quiet golden room, surrounded by the remnants of a storm that should have killed them both, the stars began to move again. But this time, Sira was no longer drifting. She was steering. The day they left Zyrath 9, the sun didn't rise. Not that it ever truly did on that fractured, oxygen-starved rock, but even the dim violet glow that usually bled through the ash clouds was gone, swallowed by thick, churning skies. Jack stood at the top of the cargo ramp, staring at the station's jagged silhouette one last time. Towers leaned like tired bones. Lights flickered and died in uneven bursts. The storm had passed days ago, but the fear it left behind still clung to the walls like rust. Behind him, soft footsteps echoed. You're certain? Sira asked. He turned. She wore a reworked utility harness, tools glinting in the straps. Her stance was straight, but her hands betrayed her, folded tight, fingers curled inward. It was the first time he'd seen her hesitate. No, he said. Honestly, but I'm done surviving in circles. He nodded toward the ramp. Come with me. Sira didn't move. You don't owe me anything, he added. But if you want more than this place, I've got room. Her 4 eyes met his. Something passed between them, an echo of the words she'd never heard until he spoke them. I will go, she said. But I am not yet what you think I am. Maybe not, Jock said with a small smile. But I've got time. When the starboard edge lifted off, no one waved goodbye. The hangars below remained silent, and for the first time since he'd landed, Jocks didn't look back. Space swallowed the ship like a secret. They traveled quietly at first, skimming asteroid belts and forgotten outposts, picking up low-risk repair jobs, replacing broken satellites, restoring failing hydro farms, rerouting relays. Sira handled the work with her usual silent precision, but something had shifted. She spoke more now, asked questions. Not about systems, but about people. Why do humans name their ships? She asked once, running diagnostics in the cockpit. Because it makes them feel less alone, Jocks answered. Another time. What is laughter? It's when something unexpected happens and your brain doesn't know whether to run or celebrate. She blinked slowly, then mimicked the sound. It was uneven, mechanical. Jax laughed so hard he nearly choked. Was that correct? She asked. Not even close, he grinned, but it was perfect. Little by little, Sira opened up. She began changing the ship's environment, not for efficiency, but for comfort. Dimming lights during sleep cycles. Modifying the air to smell less like recycled metal and more like something faintly floral. She painted symbols on the walls, elegant, swirling marks from her native tongue. Jocks never asked what they meant. He didn't need to. What changed the most was the way she interacted with others. On Belfin Station, a crew of human miners refused her help, called her names, said her kind didn't belong. Jax expected her to walk away. Instead, Sira calmly restored their life support regulators in silence, then rerouted their failing oxygen pump to double efficiency. She left before they could thank her. The next day, their foreman sent a message. We were wrong. She saved us. Tell her we're sorry. Sira read the message 3 times. You okay? Jocks asked. I am uncertain how to process apology. You don't have to, he said. Just remember it happened. After that, people began to notice. Outpost after outpost whispered her name. Sira the Solver. The alien mechanic who fixed what Federation techs abandoned. The one who worked for food, not credit. The one with 4 eyes and hands like light. And something strange happened. Instead of fear came respect. It began in fragments, a grateful nod, a cautious thank you, a question asked without sarcasm. And Sira began to glow, not physically, not visibly, but in the way she stood. The way her voice no longer held tension. The way her 4th eye sometimes blinked slowly in reflection, not fear. One night, in orbit above Myral 4, Jocks found her alone in the observation deck. She stood by the glass, stars dancing across her skin like reflections on water. Thinking. Again? He asked. Always? About? She turned. You said? You had room. Not just on the ship, in your life. Jocks nodded. I did. Do you still? He didn't hesitate. Always. Sira stepped closer. Her hand lifted, hovered near his chest, then rested gently against his shoulder. Then let me stay, she said softly. Not because I am useful, but because I choose to. Jocks swallowed the lump in his throat. You never had to ask. They stood like that, wordless, wrapped in the vast silence of space. The stars didn't care. The void didn't celebrate. But inside the starboard edge, something whole was being built one moment at a time, and for the first time in her life, Sira wasn't being used. She was being trusted. The signal came without a warning, no origin code, no encryption. Just a low pulse echoing through subspace like a heartbeat in the dark. Sira was the first to notice. She was reprogramming a terraforming satellite's relay node when the console lit up. Violet glyphs, ancient, curved, unmistakably alien, flashed across the screen. Her hand froze mid-keystroke. For a long moment, she said nothing. Didn't breathe. Didn't move. Jax, watching from behind her, leaned in. That Federation tech? She shook her head slowly. No. Then what? Sira stared at the signal, all four eyes fixed on the code like it was a ghost. My people. Jock stepped back. They're contacting you? No, she said quietly. They're contacting what they left behind. The message pulsed again, 3 tones, repeated, then silence. An invitation. A trigger. A memory. Jax placed a hand on her shoulder. We don't have to answer it. But I do. The coordinates led them to the Helian Rift, a pocket of warped gravity near the rim of known space. No trade routes. No stations, just broken satellites and drifting wrecks. As they approached, Jax noticed the temperature drop even with shields. Calibrated. Fields wrong. He muttered. Sira didn't respond. She stood at the edge of the viewport, expression unreadable. That signal, she said, is from a vault, a memory archive. My kind use them to store knowledge and experiments. What kind of experiments? She turned slowly. Me. They found it orbiting a collapsed dwarf star, a satellite the size of a frigate, covered in fractured glyphs and hollow towers. No lights, no motion. It looked abandoned. But as the starborn edge drew close, the vault stirred. Lights flickered. Antennas extended. A scanning beam swept across their hull. They know I'm here, Sira said. They recognize my pattern. Jax reached for the controls. If they're hostile, they won't attack. They'll watch. Why? Because I was their failure, she said quietly. And they always watch their failures. They docked in silence. The vault interior was cold and sterile, black corridors etched with faint glowing script. Drones hovered silently, ignoring Jax entirely. But as Sira stepped inside, they moved, followed her, scanned her. Not as a threat, but as property. Jax bristled. You don't have to do this. I do. At the vault's core was a chamber of light. Walls pulsed with neural code. Memory threads, thousands of them, streamed along glowing tracks, and then a voice echoed. Not a person, not even a personality. Just a cold, mechanical narration. Units 93 detected. Anomaly re-engaged. Sira stepped forward. I am not your unit. I am not your tool. Classification. Unstable. Memory breach initiated. Reason. For failure. Emotional variance. Empathy overload. System threat. Jax moved to stop it, but Sira raised a hand. Let it speak. She whispered. The walls lit up with images her as a child, eyes larger, hands smaller. Fixing systems twice her size, outperforming every metric. But then she cried once, and they labeled her broken. Unit S93 designated for deactivation. Request for mercy. Denied. Jax's jaw clenched. You were a child. Sira stared at the projection. I was a product. Then she turned to the core and did something Jax didn't expect. She reached out and linked with it. Her hands glowed. Her veins shimmered. The glyphs along her arms activated like forgotten keys. Energy pulsed through her body and into the archive. The vault screamed, Sira! Jax shouted. She didn't flinch. The vault tried to lock her out, but she was faster, more evolved. The years of surviving, adapting, understanding emotion, those weren't flaws. They were power. She rewrote their memory strings, rerouted their logic gates. And when it was done, the vault went dark. No voice. No defense. Just silence. She stepped back, breathing hard. Her eyes dimmed. Her shoulders shook. Jax caught her before she fell. What did you do? I rewrote their definition of failure, she whispered. And what is it now? To never feel. They left the vault behind, drifting, dormant. Rewritten. Back on the starboard edge, Jax helped her into the medbay. She was quiet, distant, as if some piece of her had been left behind in the code. You okay? He asked softly. I don't know. But you're free now. She looked at him, really looked, her eyes tired but bright. I don't feel free. I feel unfinished. That's not failure, he said gently. That's being alive, she blinked. A single tear rolled down, not because of pain, but because it was the first time she truly believed it. Years passed. They traveled together long beyond the Helian rift, through dead zones and starlit ports. They repaired what others discarded, healed what others thought broken, and everywhere they went, they were met with wonder, not because Jax was brave, not because their ship was fast, but because of her sira, the solver, the alien who'd once been discarded. Now the woman who fixed the galaxy one soul at a time, and every night before they slept, Jax would whisper the words she once didn't understand. You are extraordinary. And she would whisper back, I believe you. Because sometimes a single voice in the right moment rewrites the entire universe.